Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mrs. Marianne G. Handler. Cantor David Goldstein from North Shore Congregation Israel will be officiating. For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off, and we welcome those of you who are joining us online. If I can kindly ask the family to get to stand together as the cantor approaches to perform the ancient ceremony of Kriya.
Sure. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. Is anybody else wearing a ribbon? Okay. So, in Genesis chapter 37, verse 29, when Reuben returned to the pit that Joseph had been thrown into and discovered that it was empty, his first reaction was to rend his clothing, to tear his clothing. A few verses later, 5 exactly, Jacob learns that, not true, but thought that his son had died, and so he too rent his clothing, he tore his clothing. Ever since then, the tearing of clothing has become a sign of that loss, that tear in the fabric of our lives, in the fabric of our heart. And so, but we're a little more practical these days in some circles, not all. And we wear a ribbon, and we're going to tear it instead of our lapel or our tie or our shirt. And but before we do so, we're going to say a blessing. So after me, Baruch Atah Adonai, Dayan, Ha'emet. Praise be God, the judge of truth. And now tear from the bottom. לכל זמן ולכל חפץ תחת השמיים. לכל זמן ולכל חפץ תחת השמיים. עת ללדת ועת למות. עת לטעת ועת לעקור נטוע, עת להרוג ועת לרפוא, עת לפרוץ ועת לבנות, לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. A time for birth and a time for death, a time to plant and a time to uproot the planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear and a time to build. לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. Kohelet, chapter 3. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather them in, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me. Your word was gift to me. To remember this brings painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Shiviti Adonai lenhagdi tamid ki mimini ba'emot lachein samach libi ve'yagel kevodi af besari ishkon lavetach כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחרות, תודיעני אורח חיים, אורח חיים. סובה שמחות פניך נעימות בימינך נצח שיוויתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד כי מימיני בל אמות. These words from Psalm 16 that I have just chanted, I am ever mindful of the divine presence who is at my right hand. I shall never be shaken. So my heart rejoices, my whole being exults, my body rests secure. For you will not abandon me, or let your faithful ones see the pit. You will teach me the path of life. In your presence is perfect joy. Delights are ever in your right hand. When I die, remember me with a smile and laughter. If thoughts of me provoked no love, only sadness and tears, I ask that I be soon forgotten. Give what's left of me away to children and old men who wait to die. And if you must cry, cry for your brother who walks in grief beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved or helped in some special way. And if you cannot give me away, let me live in your eyes for a while, as well as in your mind. You can love me most by letting love live within the circle of your arms, embracing the frightened ones. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Adonai haroi lo echsar, binodesh yarbitzeni, aname menuchot yanhaleni, nafshi yashovev, yanacheni v'mahaglet tzedek, leman shemo, gam ki elech begetzal mavet, lo ira ra, ki hata imadi, shivtecha, ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי תשענת והשם ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. Please join me in the translation of these words that I've just chanted from Psalm 23, found in your booklets. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. To my children, my eyes are closed, my heart is quiet. My life is in stillness. Yet, will I not always see you and listen to you? You have always been my treasure, my hope, my promise. Your life has been mine, and my life has been yours. Should it be different now? Is not your life still much of my life? Is not your love still much of my love? Could I ever grow tired of your joys and celebrations? Could I ever turn away from your sufferings and loneliness? Would you mind if I still smile at your foolishness? Remember, I am your mother. If I have failed you, then your sorrow would be long. If I neglected you, your suffering would be unbearable. But from the moment of your life to the moment of my death, I have given you strength. I have given you warmth. I have given you peace. I know you won't forget me, but I want to be remembered most of all in the love you share with each other and with your friends, in the love you share with the lonely and the friendless. Come, let us celebrate together our life's work. Let us put aside our sadness and rejoice in all those precious moments spent together. let us celebrate your life and mine. What will matter? Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no minutes, hours, or days. All the things you collected, whether treasured or forgotten, will pass to someone else. Your wealth, fame, and temporal power will shrivel to irrelevance. It will not matter what you owned or what you were owed. Your grudges, resentments, frustrations, and jealousies will finally disappear. So too, your hopes, ambitions, plans, and to-do lists will expire. The wins and losses that once seemed so important will fade away. It won't matter where you came from or what side of the tracks you lived on. At the end, it won't matter whether you were beautiful or brilliant. Even your gender and skin color will be irrelevant. So, what will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, or encouraged others to emulate your example. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many you will feel a lasting loss. But how many will feel a lasting loss when you are gone? What will matter is not your memories, but the memories of those who loved you. What will matter is how long you will be remembered, by whom, and for what. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1, we read, "A good name is better than fragrant oil, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth." In one commentary focused upon the second half of that verse, the following scene is described. A crowd of people is standing on a dock as ships are leaving and entering port. One noticed that the ships leaving port received little response, but those entering port arrived with much cheering and animation. The person making the observation asked members of the cheering assembly why the ship entering port received such a big response, and the one leaving port such a small response. The other person answered, "We have no idea of the fate of the journey of the ship that leaves the port. But the ship that returns, we know the nature of its voyage. So too is one's life. At birth, there is no way to know the nature of one's actions, the paths one might take, but on the day of one's death, we have a full understanding of the nature of one's deeds and the journey they have taken." While I did not know Marianne, I did get a glimpse into the fullness of life, the fullness of her journey, when we sat together yesterday. Born in 1931 in Chicago to Sally and Irving Greenfield, Marianne learned the values of a loving family and education. And though her father and brother became lawyers, that was not the approved path for her. This antiquated view of women's pursuits was not unusual during those years. No doubt these arbitrary limitations might have shaped Marianne's thinking, sensibilities, passions, and political activism. Marianne became an educator. Originally, she taught in the K-12 environment, and later she saw technology as a wonderful tool for learning, and went back to school to more fully understand how to integrate technology and learning. She ultimately received her doctorate in education. According to one of her blog posts, I quote, "I loved my work. I loved working with my students. I loved working with my professional colleagues. I loved the chance to work professionally with other organizations, designing standards for use of instructional technologies." She went on, "In 1989, I left the K-12 environment to work at a university that had a technology in education. My belief then, and still today, is that you impact more students when you work with teachers." Following retirement, Marianne continued to find ways to teach about computers with her grandchildren. As soon as they were strong enough to sit up, Marianne had them in front of the computer, teaching them how to play computer games. I pause here to allow David and Karen and Joey, and I will read Cindy's words in there somewhere, to give a little more depth and breadth to the memory of their dear Marianne, their grandmother, their mother. And so I call on David first, and then Karen.
I have notes, but it occurs to me that if Mom is here today, she is loving this. Not just because we're going to talk all about her and all the things she did, which is how she liked to steer most conversations, but because this tight-knit family that is here today is really proof of her greatest success. And her real legacy is the two families that she brought together to make one, and that grew to a bigger family as one. And more than any stone we're going to put on the ground, that's the monument she built. I was going to tell you to leave the crying till the end to help me, but I screwed it up. And if she's not here with us, I don't want people to lose faith, because that would be like Mom to go do what she wanted to do on her own schedule. And if there was something better to do today, she was going to do it. And but she always wanted the family to continue on wherever she was. I can think back to those days, Ron, when there would be an Apple Educator Conference, and you would say, "No, there's no museum, I don't want to go." And Mom would say, "Well, you know, I could go and you could stay here and just work uninterrupted on your wood carving, and you could weld, and I'm going to put a salami in the refrigerator." And Ron would look like Hanukkah come early, and it was great. And so Mom knew how to make sure the family went on just fine when she wasn't there. Now to the notes. I want to make a confession. I don't like funerals, and I was not going to ask to speak today. Those of you who know some of my earlier work as officiant know I'm more of a wedding guy. And I like those. But over the last week, I realized this was a different kind of funeral, and we needed to do a different kind of remembering. Because Mom had 92 great years of sharing in and creating the joy of this family, and her 93rd year was not so good. And I thought that year kind of stole from us those good memories, and I wanted to speak to start the conversation of remembering those good memories again. Because those are the good memories that will live in all our hearts, and those memories in our hearts are the memorial we are going to build for her. Cantor Goldstein is right. There was Mom was a teacher above all, and there were kind of three phases to how she taught other people. The first was teaching students in the classroom, and the second was first as a librarian and then as a media learning center director, teaching multimedia, and there's more knowledge than can be found in just books. And then third was teaching teachers. And as I thought about it, there was kind of three phases in the way she taught all of us in her life. And she taught us more by example than by lecture. And I look to Ron when I say that because I think he would say there was a little lecturing. And if you say that, I know a guy named Mel who will agree with you. I put in my notes, the first phase is ADBR. That's after divorce, before Ron. It's not like BCAD, although Mom would like the comparison. And before Ron, my memories after the divorce, it was pretty hard. I remember Mom had this desk in the bedroom. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was off in the corner. And so she would start these days. She was a teacher. She was a single working mom, and she would teach kids, and she would come home, and she had these 3 children. I think they were practically perfect. She might disagree. She probably made us dinner, and then I remember her going up to work at that desk. And I think she was working coursework for what became her master's. And I remembered then, and I've reflected more on it now, that seemed pretty hard. And she never complained about it. She always would just push on. And she always had this view that life was what you made of it. Life wasn't what happened to you, it was how you dealt with it. That's what defined you. You could choose to be happy or choose not to be happy. You couldn't change what other people did. You couldn't change what the world did, but you could change how you think about it. And that was really the first lesson I have in mind when I think of Mom, because she always pushed us to push on, as just the way she did then. Phase 2 began when this mustachioed guy started coming on the scene. He was this guy with like dead trees that he called driftwood and rusted old iron, and I would say, Mom, who is the homeless guy? And she would come on, but they fell in love, and he was the love of her life. And they lit in each other a passion for discovery, and a passion for learning, and a passion for reinventing themselves. And they taught that lesson to us, to keep asking questions and keep being interested to be interesting and keep reinventing yourself. But the third phase were the best lessons, and that's when Mom learned how to grow a family and accept daughters-in-laws and son-in-laws and, above all else, grandchildren who made many of us irrelevant as they came on the scene. But Mom was accepting and loved all these new people in her life. She met especially every grandchildren. She just met them where she found them. She didn't try to change them. She didn't care who they were, what their political beliefs were. She just wanted to love them. She didn't try to change people or fix people. She just tried to love people. And she had these traditions and the trips and Springfield and Indianapolis and incredibly accepting. And I would think to myself, who is this person? I don't even know her. This is not the mother I grew up with. But she had changed. The mother I grew up with had a list for dinner. I don't know if you guys remember. We had the meal list. She got so sick of 6 food critics eating dinner with her every night. She would put a list up, and it was my way or the highway. This is what we're serving, and if you don't want it, too bad. And she, over time, evolved and became this different, accepting, adapting person. She was the same mom who told me, she probably told all of you, if you marry a Gentile, I don't know if I'll go to the wedding. And yet, here came Cindy and Lois and Doug and Dan, who am I forgetting? And then Kasha and Maura. And by the way, this list is long, and it's a lesson to those of you young parents about how to get your kids to do something. Don't tell them what to do. It's not effective. But every one of those, she loved her daughters-in-law and sons-in-law, and she loved her grandchildren. And she taught us the lesson that what she used to tell us what would make her happy, in life later she asked us what would make the family happy. And that was really her lesson to us. The family that is here today is really the proof of the success of all those lessons. They sometimes talk about the wisdom and the generosity of spirit of people who plant trees, knowing they'll never sit in the shade of those trees and know they'll never see the full height of the tree. This family is Mom's tree. And her lesson to us is push on, stay strong, listen, love, learn, but mostly keep talking about her. Thank you.
First of all, not cool to put me after David. Yeah, as a good speaker. I forgot that I brought this instead of my speech. Hold on. Rattle me the order there. Hi. Thank you for coming to honor our amazing mom. She would be so happy we were all here together, and as David said, especially to talk about her. She kind of liked that. I'm going to have to read this. If I spoke off the cuff, we might be here for a while. Although Alex, mom's first child, is here with us, and he has a forced ending to my conversations, which is to say, okay, and you're done. And I think he got that chutzpah from his mom, Cookie. She always told me what to do, too. When mom's good friend called me back when she heard the news about mom, she said simply, she made a difference. That says it all. Mom did make a difference. She made a difference in the lives of her family. She made a difference in the lives of her friends, her colleagues, and her students. She made a difference in the lives of every person who was lucky enough to be part of her world. A common theme I heard yesterday by the people who reached out after they heard about mom was how mom touched each of them by her ever-present interest in their lives, her encouragement and support to the people she loved, and her never-ending intellectual curiosity and willingness to share her passion and excitement for the world around her. Her willingness to share was part of what she described in her own words on her online blog as her love story, which she said was the love of helping others and love of a career. By the way, for a long time I had heard about this blog of hers she worked on, with, of course, her usual zest and excitement for whatever she was up to at the time, whether it be needlepointing, quilting, scrapbooking, which, by the way, her scrapbooking included a true treasure, a recipe book filled with family recipes she had asked all of us to send to her, as well as her own, from old Romanian recipes from days of yore to recipes of her kids, current day. Besides the recipes in the book, there were family stories and pictures of family and original handwritten recipes, cards included. It was amazing. I'm still amazed every time I look at it. And she was, I'm glad you're sitting down for this, 80 at the time she wrote that. She distributed it to the whole family, which we all use now, including grandchildren, and which will be an amazing legacy of love. So back to the list. She also published books and presented at conferences with colleagues nationwide, made amazing dinners, and raised 6 kids while teaching and getting her advanced degrees. She researched and created genealogy, org charts, you name it, she was doing it. But for this daughter, me at the time, I was totally unimpressed because that's just what I knew about mom. That was her default. I was like, okay, yada, yada, yada. It wasn't until mom had a bout with double pneumonia and landed in the hospital on a ventilator, we were uncertain if she would survive, that I realized, oh no, I never looked at this so-called blog she was doing, and I would maybe never get the chance to talk to her about it. Well, what I found out was about that blog, which is called drgrandmablogspot.com, by the way, and which was her signature on every email. But I had until then failed to even notice that or care before. But it was filled with pure gold. Her words shine through as her love affair with life and all that goes with it, the joys, the sorrows, and everything else in between. It's filled with her musings, her wonderful sense of humor, and her true appreciation for everything that held meaning for her. It was inspirational, it was interesting, and with historical references as well as current-day topical opinions, which, as you all well know, she was known to share on a daily basis. I was so glad I took the time to go look and was able to tell her how awesome it was and how proud I was of her for doing it. By the way, if you ever have time and want a good read, it's drgrandmablogspot.com. Let me know and I'll send you the link. It's fun to read. A rabbi once said that we all die twice. First, when our bodies pass from life, and then again when people stop talking about us. When you read that blog or remember Mom, we will be thinking of her and talking about all she brought to life. Her own life that she curated and loved so much, and to our lives, her influence, her love, her support. As one of her very dear and adored nephews told me, she was his cheerleader from when he was a very young boy to now. When Mom always loved to see all the projects that he was involved in that were so creative and interesting, and Mom was right there so enthusiastically enjoying and spurring him on, being excited to watch for his next very creative endeavor. Well, his next endeavor was on the day Mom passed away yesterday. He was involved in today's service honoring Mom. Last night when I was talking with him, telling him what I was going to do with the pictures and memories we all have of Mom, he told me his dad, my Uncle Michael and Mom's brother, taught him about the importance in Judaism of ensuring that a loved one is given a proper burial, since it is a debt or favor that can never be repaid. He said he would be grateful at the time of my mother's funeral to be able to contribute to helping in some way. Mom would love it. She loved him, she loved computer technology, so she would appreciate more than anybody his efforts in the final product. And this creative endeavor was before flying in from Canada to be with us here today. Thank you, Bobby Greenfield, wherever you are. Where are you? There he is. Thank you, Bobby Greenfield, from Mom, and from me and from our family. Plus, as Bobby noted, it was very smart to outsource film production to Canada and the cheaper Canadian labor. We definitely came in under budget. Thank you. Mom, you did make such a difference. I will miss you so much, as we all will, and I will strive to be a woman of strength and courage as you were. I'll try to make a difference too. I'm not sure how that will work out, but I'll try.
And these words from Cindy, Dave's wife. She went by many names in her life: Marianne, Mrs. Greenfield, Mrs. Rosenblum, Mom, Mrs. Handler, the librarian, the esteemed Dr. Handler, Grandma Ron, Gigi Ma. It took me a while to call Marianne Mom, but she was a wonderful, loving mother to me from the first moment. I met my future mother-in-law, Mrs. Handler, the librarian, in 1979, when my then boyfriend, David, brought me home to Glencoe during our sophomore year of college to meet her. She was open and accepting then, and as soon as we were married, she asked me to call her Mom. I tried, but I could not for the first 40 years. Last year, I finally began to call her Mom. But she was a mother to me every minute of those 44 years. Cookie, Jody, Andy, Karen, and Matt are my siblings. I have laughed more around Mom and Ron's dinner table than any other. She taught me many things, mostly useful. Some I actually still use, like needlepoint, like how to be a grandmother, the world of books for children, and in the 1980s, computers and computer science, the value of travel with girlfriends, about cooking and foods of all kinds. David, Ron, and Matt introduced me to Chicago-style Vienna dogs, but my mom would probably say, no. I gave you your first Vienna dog at that lunch in Skokie, when I also gave you your first cheddar fries. David and I lived in Cambridge, Mass. In the early 1980s, the time when Mom was still working on her master's for technology and education. I worked at a startup software company across the street from the MIT bookstore. She loved that place, and she loved to talk about technology. She went on to write a book about it. She got her master's. She got her doctorate. She got a new license plate. Her family grew and grew. Through it all, Mom continued to be Mom. My mom, Marianne, loved me, and I love her forever. Peace be with you. Goodbye, Mom. And I call Joey to offer Carly's words in her absence.
Audio levels, all right. I've heard some whispering, said it should be a little bit louder, so I'll try and do what I can here. Thank you all for being here, first and foremost, looking around the room, a lot of familiar faces. I could speak for the family, it means a lot. I am speaking on behalf of 11 grandchildren, many of which couldn't be here today, speaking on the tree that David talked about, the tree of life that Grandma planted. That tree has branches around this country now, in Austin and Denver and California, the Carolinas. And so unfortunately some couldn't make it, but I'll be speaking on behalf of them, and most of these words were written by Carly, her 6th oldest grandchild. I hope I got that right. Grandma embraced all of life, what all of life had to offer, with enthusiasm and grace. Her curiosity and love of learning allowed her to travel the world, earn a doctorate degree, and even keep a Twitter active, heavily packed with political views into her early 90s. She never slowed down and made it a point to express how passionately she believed in these ideas, how much she valued tradition, and above all, how deeply she cherished her family and her friends. She didn't wear her heart on... Did that just go out? Okay. She didn't wear her heart on her sleeve. She wore it on her license plate. She was tremendously proud of her professional achievements and her beautiful family that she had grown. Her license plate, Dr. Grandma, said it all. Not only did she seize every opportunity to live life fully, she documented her adventures constantly so she could share her joys with all of everyone around her. Whether it's to be in the form of a scrapbook album highlighting the best moments of her special trips with us, or creating the Dr. Grandma blog, or compiling an extensive genealogy portfolio of our family history, or making sure that each and every one of us who wanted a copy got her personally written A Taste of Our History, the Siegel Greenfield Family Recipes, 1907 to 2001 by Marianne Handler. That's for another. That's what I get for looking up. In this special cookbook, Grandma wrote a dedication that I would like to share with you all. This book is dedicated to the memory of our grandparents and their offspring. This book is truly a work of love, created in the hope that these recipes will provide a sense of whence from we to come. Our original family forebears who had the courage, strength, and wisdom to leave their loved ones and make new lives for themselves in the great land, opened the doors for the good lives of their descendants now to enjoy. I send my wish that all will find the pleasure in trying these recipes and at the same time make us appreciative of the legacy of those who came before us. Grandma, you'd be happy to know that we all appreciate this, love you, and from your accomplishments of this book, we will pass this down from our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Now, before I go, Grandma, There's been a cousin text group that has been going off in the last 24 hours. Hundreds and hundreds of memories were shared, of which we wanted to compile into some creative English paper or speech, of which you as our teacher would probably give us a C- on. So I decided to scrap it and just in no particular order list many of these memories, some of which are small, some of which are big, some of which are funny, some of which are dull. But in all these memories, they carry on a lesson, and a lesson that we promise to carry on forever. First is curiosity. We as your grandchildren loved our special trips with you, whether it was taking all of us to medieval times, long miscellaneous road trips, Blue Man Group, pedicures, Washington, D.C., Springfield. We love the world that we would explore with you. I said in our text message group, remembering these fun times, Grandma, you took Adam and I to Springfield one year, and I described it as you were driving us around like it was your own backyard. It was 10 times better than any tour guide could have given us. Hannah remembers these good times with saying, also, one time Grandma took me to this old-timey photograph place when I was like 10 or 11 years old and made me dress up in these weird pictures, fancy dresses, and hold an umbrella. I'll find the pictures, but it was definitely one of the strangest and at the same time most memorable moments of my childhood. Thank you, Grandma, for always being the fun one. Technology. This was talked about a lot. We promised to keep up with the times. You were the first to show us a computer. We were all, as Cantor described, sitting on your lap for our first fingers on a keyboard. You wanted that photo as something that we would hold on to forever. You knew what the future of computers would bring to us, and you showed us all the ways. 30 years later, you're still showing us the ways of the latest iPhone tricks. You were certainly ahead of the time. Tradition. Hosting Passover is one of your favorite traditions. They say that Passover, no one should eat alone. Well, you took that to a whole nother level. You would rent out a grand ballroom of a hotel every single year and host close to 100 people, most of which in this room was probably at one point. More than half of the family, though, never met these people. But that was you. You wanted everyone to understand the Jewish tradition. Fond of these memories, grandson Nicky said in quotes of the text message group, Grandma would ask the grandkids to hide the afikomen during Passover, but then get frustrated when she inevitably couldn't find it because we would take it way too far. AJ then responds, I think that was me, but it was a team effort, but I'll own up to that one. Legend has it, I put it in the ceiling of an elevator, and it's still up there. Everyone in the group chat responded, ha-ha, to that one. Nikki actually responded saying, that line better make it in the speech. Well, Nikki made it in the speech. Continuing on with traditions was the tradition of birthdays and the value they put on birthdays. Before we even woke up, you were always our first call. She loved celebrating her grandchild's birthdays, and after a birthday, she would then have a solo day out. One of the youngest grandchildren, Chucky, remembers it by saying, I think she would take me to P.F. Chang's or sushi, and then take me to Toys R Us for a shopping spree. Always had the most fun on my birthday with her. Another value is saving. We promised to save, Grandma. You would always tell us on how we should all buy Apple stock. That was the stock to invest in. That was the company that you were the most bullish on. Mikey, your savvy grandson, said in remembering this value, Joey, when you speak, I would like to talk about the potential value of compound interest. If I had invested the change from this tiny jar that she would let us grab coins from as a tradition over Passover, what that money could be nowadays. We promise to carry on that tradition of the small change jar from Passovers to continue. The value of a home-cooked meal. You loved when we gathered around your kitchen. We loved the smell of those burning latkes during Hanukkah, only to be aired out by your beautiful screened-in porch. AJ said, "I'm surprised no one mentioned her expert culinary skills, namely the classic spaghetti and hot dogs with Kraft singles dish." This was a staple for you, Grandma. Hannah responded to AJ's comment saying, "Gotta be honest, I made that 3 years ago and it still slaps." Slaps is slang for it's like still really good. Yeah. And when you didn't cook, you loved to take us out. As your one athlete grandchild, Nick Boehm, the offensive lineman who certainly needed his protein at a young age, remembered, I loved all of our old country buffet visits. That was our go-to dinner spot. The value of physical touch. You never gave us a shortage of hugs, Grandma. You would always hold our hand when we were young. Hannah and Jared remembered this actually in reverse, though. And I quote, "Grandma was also a huge lover of back scratches. When my nails were long," this is Hannah, "I'd scratch her back, she'd hunch over and say, 'Oh,' and I definitely won't be moving any longer." We promise to continue to hug like you hugged. Last but certainly not least, the value of family. Where to start with this one? Family was the most important to you. You would demand your children to let your grandchildren sleep over. When we'd spend the night, you would put us in the living room in a pull-out couch with NBA sheets, a TV, and endless chocolate donuts. It was our favorite. As luxury real estate agent grandchild Mikey said in response to this, "Well, yeah, that's because it was a one-bedroom house. Times were tough." Your oldest grandchild, Alex, responded to this tradition of family by saying, "Dexter, one of your great-grandsons, loved that Grandma always gave him new books to read. Anna, your great-granddaughter, remembers Grandma was always bringing her to new playgrounds." Grandma, on behalf of your grandchildren, Alex, Adam, AJ, Joey, Mikey, Nick, Billy, Carly, Charlie, Hannah, Jared, and your great-grandchildren, Dexter, Anna, Reese, Gavin, Nell, Colton, we would not ask for a better role model. We love you, thank you for the values that you instilled in us, and we promise to keep them from generations to come. As that above all else, we know what you would want most. We love you, Grandma.
Such beautiful words and memories. We continue with Marianne's marriage to Ron. A warm, loving relationship was now evident to her and to those around her. Family was so important, as we've heard over and over today, to both of them. They started by blending the two households, 6 kids, not the Brady Bunch, from 2 different families, combining them to become one unified, cohesive family. Marianne and Ron made that happen. They demonstrated the beauty of each following their own passions while always finding ways to come together. Marianne would be upstairs, working on her genealogy projects and engaging in political activism. And Ron would be 2 stories below, in the basement, I guess, working on his passions for art and architecture. On the floor in between, they would meet. They would meet for meals, discussions, sharing, and sometimes a debate on a topic that might come up. To this end, Ron thought it might be a good idea for Marianne to go back to school to become a lawyer so he would have more time with his art and architecture. And I wondered, what would her father have said? Marianne loved to host family gatherings. She did so understanding that timing was very important. No one should feel pulled between 2 different family traditions or gatherings. So she created Thanksgivika, a time for a special gathering that allowed for maximum participation somewhere in between Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, I guess, but that didn't conflict with anyone's calendar, so that there would be minimum calendral conflicts. A published writer. A book of hers can be found on Amazon, at least one, yes. And Marianne continued to find fulfillment in her pursuits. Her travels added richness to her stories and her blog posts. Her Twitter account was similar to many of those I've read by activists, and I won't tell you what they said, but they're pretty similar to many of those activists on a certain political spectrum. There's no question about how she leaned politically and some of the issues that most concerned her. And they probably originated from her family of origin. Women's rights in particular were very important to her. So Marianne's ship has come in. The fullness of her life and legacy are now planted for each of you to nourish. When you teach someone something, help someone to become inquisitive, stand up for your beliefs, find ways to be inclusive, do so with the memory of Marianne, an exemplar in so many ways. So now the task is left to those who are left behind, you, her family, and her friends, to build a beautiful memory that leads to blessing. Mostly, you will build her memory when you give of yourselves to each other and maintain strong bonds of unity. May Marianne's memory be for a blessing to those who knew her, were close to her, and who loved her. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of the sun, we will remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. So long as we live, she too will live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. If you are able, please rise for the memorial prayer. El Malerachamim Shochein ban romim Ometzei menuchan kono Ometzei menuchan kono Tachat kalvei השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת מרים בת יצחק שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה. אנא בעל הרחמים, אסתריה בשאת כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח רוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר, Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Marianne Handler, who has entered eternity. May her place of rest be like that of the Garden of Eden. O God of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, Hoyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yase shalom, Yas shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yas shalom, yas shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yas shalom, yas shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yas shalom, yas shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service and Shiva are private. Please note the memorial contributions, and if I may say, I typically don't go off script. This is one of the nicest contributions I think I've ever read in my 40-year career. Please consider honoring the memory of this very special teacher by saying thank you or giving a gift to a special teacher in your life. I think that says it all. So for those of you who've been asked, the immediate family that are going to the cemetery, please stay in this room. We invite everyone to leave in a quiet and dignified manner to your cars, because we're not going to leave the funeral home until everyone is left. Thank you. The services are concluded.
you.